call at the new date and time. Oh, and I got the old date on there. But it is our first, we're moving to the first Thursday of every month. And that's kind of a reaction to what we heard on the survey. So that's what we're doing today. We're currently at the welcome and introduction, but we're going to get some survey results and analysis. We'd hoped to do it last week, but we were jam-packed. And then we'll have a MnDOT update where Dave's going to run down some of these demonstration projects. And then we're actually going to hear about a specific one that happened in Burnsville at the end. So with that, I will pass the baton over to Joanne. Once I can stop screen sharing here. And Joanne, you are now the host, and you can share.
Sounds good. Working on it. Hi, everyone. Welcome to 2022 and the new year. My name is Joanne Mose, for those that don't know me. And I've been working, I work at the Center for Prevention with Jill Chamberlain and have been supporting Safe Routes to School Network through evaluation. I don't know for how many years now, maybe since 2014 or so. So thanks everyone for having me today. I'm here to share the results from the survey that you all completed in November. And thank you to everyone who completed it. We had a really, really good response rate for this year's survey. And it is okay, I believe it's sharing now, correct?
It's started screen sharing, but we haven't picked, I don't see a screen that you've picked yet.
Oh, okay. Hang on one second. Oh.
And I've also got the slides that you sent me that I can share up.
Yeah, should we do that, Eric? Might
Sure.
be easier. Like mine, it says it's paused and I'm struggling to unpause it.
Yeah. Do you want to pass me the baton again?
Yeah. Let's do that, Eric.
Here we go.
Thank you. All right, so let's go to the next slide. Okay, so we had 49 respondents this year, which I only look back as far as 2016, but that's more respondents than we've had any year since then. So again, thank you everyone for completing it. It's super helpful. Again, for the more information we get, the more we can decide what's working well and then figure out where we need to make changes. So the majority of people who responded are planners or public health professionals. You can see that, overall, this is about 2/3 of folks fit in one of those two categories. The majority represent government agencies. And while this is more than we've had in previous years, although when we look at the numbers versus the percent, it seems likely that a large number of folks that potentially responded this year that didn't respond in previous years were from government agencies. 14% of respondents joined the Safe Routes to School network in the last year. 51% joined 4 or more years ago. There was a large increase in the amount of folks who responded to the survey who have not attended any of the calls in the last year. So you can see that about 55% of respondents attended 6 or less calls per year, And this includes, about a fifth or so, 22%, who did not attend any of them. Also, there was a decrease in the amount of participants who have also attended the Bike Min Walk Leadership Network calls. There were 42% that have attended those. And this might be similar to the same folks who did not attend any of the network calls, likely also didn't attend any of the Bike Walk Leadership Network calls. And we just have a couple of links here, but as of December 21, the survey was sent to 212 members of the network. And this led to a 23% response rate, which again was higher than any response rate we've ever had before. And just by way of comparison, last year it was 13%. Okay, so the next slide. Okay, so this slide just shows the geographic representation for 2021 versus 2022. And we have 4 categories here: Minneapolis-St. Paul area, metro suburban, regional hubs, and then rural or small towns. And again, you can see by these charts that when we look at the percent, there's half of folks are from rural or small town. And that was much more so than last year. But when I just looked at the raw numbers, it's really, when we look at Minneapolis, St. Paul, metro, suburban, regional hub all together, it's about the same raw number, the same number of folks who attended. It's just when we look at the increase in folks who attended, we got the largest increase in those from rural and small town. So it's great to see that there's lots of diversity and geographic representation in respondents this year. Okay, then the next slide. What we're doing is, with this question, is take a look at satisfaction with various aspects of the calls. And generally, it's pretty similar with what we've seen in the past. There's a little, like a really high amount of folks who are satisfied or very satisfied just across the board. And as you can see here, when we look at very satisfied in combination with satisfied, the MnDOT update and the usefulness of the calls really comes in at the highest. Although generally across the board, all of these have really high satisfaction, with the majority being satisfied or satisfied or very satisfied, seeing that those are the green and blue colors. Okay, and then this is just a comparison from 2021 to 2022. And again, it's pretty similar when you look at these two. There does seem to be a slight dip in the percentage of folks that are very satisfied across the board. And also there is a little bit of very unsatisfied in 2021, which in 2022, it's this dark green color that doesn't even show up on the chart. So no one checked very unsatisfied for any of it. However, it's a really small percent. And when we're looking at this, we really want to think about what the majority of folks are saying. And similar to other years, the scheduled day of week and scheduled time of day usually comes in, just a little bit less than the other aspects of the call. And that's something that also showed up in comments, which is a little bit similar to previous years. Okay, so the next slide. And this is a word cloud response. This was an open-ended question. To what aspects of the Safe Routes to School network calls do you find most useful? And really, you can see this even in the word cloud. And I went through and I looked at, I did a small analysis of the responses. And the number one response that came through was the MnDOT update. And this was including grant opportunities. Some of the other themes that made it through in response to this question was learning about what others are doing across the state. And this included real stories of implementation. Similarly, a lot about resource sharing and other types of networking. So those are really the big things that came through in response to this question, which aligns with what we generally heard in the quantitative data about most useful aspects of the call. We did also include a question on suggestions for improvement, and that's something that Eric will cover in a few slides from now. Okay, so this slide here includes responses to the question, please choose the most relevant rating indicating your interest for the following topics, which may be covered in a future Safe Routes to School network call. And the rating response options were, I'm working on this and don't need additional support. I'm curious about this and I want more support. And so the top, what I did here for organizing the answers for this question is included the top 5 for the 2 categories about I'm curious about and I want more support. And what we're hearing for I'm curious about is policy supporting universal bike and ped education, evaluation tools and updates, policy for local funding for Safe Routes to School, communication strategies, and integrating Safe Routes to School into mandated transportation week. And then the top 5 responses for I want more support were best practices, youth engagement, leadership in Safe Routes to School, program sustainability, demonstration projects, and encouragement events. And so these will really be used, these responses will be used to plan out calls for 2022 when we're thinking about what the topics are. Okay, so the next question was, what are your top 3 priorities for Safe Routes to School work in your community? And one of the main things, and again, included a little bit of a word cloud here, although this one was harder to see themes in the way that the word cloud showed up, just because the way people talked about things included different types of language. But really, the biggest theme that came through far and away was engagement and involvement of community and other stakeholders. And this came up in many responses and in many ways. Like some of the examples were expanding networks, getting students and parents more involved, work with EMS, nurses and physicians, physical education and gym teachers, law enforcement and state patrol, community involvement, staff and community engagement across 12 grades. So lots of different ways that this engagement came up and getting different stakeholders involved. One of the other themes was equity. Different culture change and ideas and acceptance was one quote. Another one was reaching underserved clients. And then safety was another topic. One person wrote bike safety, ped safety, bus safety. And then lots of times people just wrote the general word safety, education, and or infrastructure. One specific comment about education was increasing education regarding helmet use and bike ped safety. And then for infrastructure, folks said things like building infrastructure, and there were a couple specific comments about infrastructure funding. All right, the next slide. So this was a new question this year, and the question was, in the past 6 months, how has COVID affected your Safe Routes to School work? And again, this was an open-ended question, so folks could write in what they wanted. Not surprisingly, one of the big themes was that folks had to cancel in-person events and or change them to all virtual. And this included responses to references to meetings as well. So folks also talked about less capacity of school staff. One person wrote, there's less disruption to Safe Routes to School in the past 6 months than the first 6 months of COVID. School is not normal, but approaching some normalcy. That said, staff administrative teacher capacity is stretched incredibly thin, which throttles the amount of progress that can be made with programming. And similarly to that, folks wrote about things being slowed down, put on hold. One person wrote that it's impacted the scheduled delaying of a school bond referendum construction project and subsequent Safe Routes to School study that was going to be conducted in 2021 and is now shifted to 2022. Also, several folks wrote about more cars and a busing shortage. Folks said that it's increased the amount of cars on the school campus, created hazardous walking conditions and traffic jams. And then one other just general comment that it's not a priority, which again, this isn't surprising. Talking about that schools are overwhelmed with COVID issues and put Safe Routes to School on the bottom of the list. Okay, so the next question was, again, another new question this year. And this question was, there was a lead into it, and I'll just read the the lead into it really quick. And it went, so equity is the provision of personalized resources needed for all individuals to reach common goals. In other words, the goals and expectations are the same for all students, but the supports needed to achieve those goals depends on the student's needs. And then the question is, which equity areas are most relevant to the communities and students you are serving? And this was a check all apply option, which is why these don't add up to 100%. But as you can see, a majority of folks picked both income disparities and housing/geographic disparities, while less than half picked the other three, including racial disparities. Okay, so, and then finally, we asked a question about attending future meetups, and 85% of respondents said they would attend a virtual meetup in 2022. And I think we specifically referenced spring of 2022. Similarly, 2/3 also said that they would attend an in-person meetup in 2023. And that presumes that I think things get better than they are right now. But only 13% that they would not attend either of the two options. So that's the end of my slides. And do we want to pause a minute for questions, Eric, or do you want to go ahead to talk about your slides next?
No, let's pause. I'm curious as to folks' reactions here. So is there any questions, anything that jumps out and surprises people, or anything that you felt like you didn't hear that you're thinking, or that maybe we missed with these questions? Cool.
Plenty of time to keep thinking and come back around to them.
Yeah, maybe I've just got 2 more quick slides here, and maybe this will spark more combo, but maybe not. Again, this is you all already shared, which we're so grateful for. Again, the amount of response was fantastic. So this is just kind of closing the loop, because we do this every year. So the logistics feedback that we got from the 2020 survey, folks were asking us to allow more time for participant sharing. So this is a struggle. We always struggle. It's a balance of filling a call and then giving space for questions and conversation, and then not having like dead air. So it's a balancing act, and it's more art than science. But I think one thing that we can do is try to experiment with leaving a little more space in the calls and not have quite all the time regimented. Just again, so a little more air for folks to interact. Using more interactive web meeting tools. So this year we tried to experiment with using Google Docs to allow folks to see what others are thinking in their separate groups when we break out into groups. And I think we can kind of look at other tools too, if folks are interested in more interactive stuff like Mentimeter, or there's some interactive Zoom tools. That's something that we can look into playing with this year, just to make it so that we're not just talking at you and you're passively absorbing information. It can be a lot. So yeah, we want to keep you engaged. And then adapt to be timely with content and push the field. And wow, 2020, things are changing, and they're going to keep changing. So we tried to adapt content to be timely with Safe for Us to Schools grant timing, like we always will, new federal aid and the like, but also with like COVID, school closings, changing policies, changing staff levels, changing transportation habits. And we'll try to keep things as timely as we can, while keeping on the topic always of getting kids safely walking and biking to school. So that was the stuff that was from last year that's still so relevant. And then this year, the logistics feedback we got, number one was change the date, which we heard from a lot of folks, and it's always going to be, again, a balancing act, because when you change the date, some people can come and others can't, no matter what you do. So I'm just going to put it out there again that all of the calls are recorded and online. And if you can't make it, please reach out. But also, if you see a call that you're interested in and you have questions for that speaker, reach out to me and I can connect you, and or reach out to me with a question that you want asked and I will ask it for you. So feel free to reach out if you can't make it, and you can still participate in that way. Increase time to connect with others on the call. This is always an interesting one for me because time and again, folks say that like breakout rooms are hard and they're like, ugh, but at the same time, they kind of get the most out of them because folks are really looking to connect, to learn from each other, to troubleshoot, or just like shout out their victories, say, hey, we did this thing. And I don't get to scream it to that many people because COVID and I'm sitting in my room here or whatever. So we're going to try to increase time for breakout rooms, for connecting with other folks in different ways, because we know that it's important to y'all to be able to, again, connect with the network. And then last, turnover kind of requires an introduction to all the things. So as we saw in the survey, there's a lot of different people that are moving into Safe Routes to Schools work. And there's been a lot of turnover. People are changing careers, changing jobs. A lot of people are jumping off of the call as their careers change. So with that turnover, it kind of creates this little information vacuum. So I think it's just something for us on the call to think of. We need to always be reintroducing vocabulary, concepts, the people, because there's a lot that goes into Safe Routes to Schools. And so we will do our best to get these new folks up to speed on all of the different terminologies, acronyms, all the things that we do. So again, I had one more. Man, a lot of talking. Quotable quotes. And I won't call out your name. I was a little disheartened that Moorhead wasn't listed as a regional hub. The population of our urban area is 215,000 people, and Moorhead makes up about 20% of that. Our bad, as from now on, Moorhead will be a regional hub. Next up, I would love to hear about how to engage school staff in concerning themselves with Safe Routes to Schools issues. Engaging staff and families has been a recurring theme, and we'll continue to look at best practices from what folks are doing in the state and even from out of the state to keep people up with messaging engagement. Then the third one was in response to how we can get more people on the call. Again, a lot of people changing jobs and such in the last year. And I'll just point out again that all these calls are online. And if you really are interested in the topic, reach out to me and I will get your question in front of the speaker. How to integrate Safe Routes to Schools into other aspects of school wellness, equity, equity in Safe Routes to Schools, anti-racism in Safe Routes to Schools. This was a question about what could we do better and what things are you interested in. I think this kind of speaks to projects like Jenny Borden's, where they were talking about anti-street harassment. So empowering students and educators and trying to talk about different aspects of wellness in the school community. And that's something that we want to keep pushing and exploring. And then I want to know how to connect with minority groups from other countries and the communities I serve. So Minnesota's communities are in constant change, and having the desire to connect with people, with everyone in your community is a great quality. We'll keep looking for projects to promote on the call that show this kind of outreach, bearing in mind that outreach for each community will be unique. So again, thank you all so much for participating, for everything that you did. And I got one last chance for questions before I'll pass it over to Dave. Is there any other questions from the survey? Things that you're curious about the process, or a question you would have liked to see on the survey? Well, again, thank you so much for your responses, and I'm going to pass it over to Dave.
Thanks, Eric. Something I was thinking about with the thinking about the statistic, I think it was 51% of folks have been here for 4 years or more, and maybe 14% were here in their first year. And, we kind of got at it with, coming back to the basics occasionally here and ensuring that we're not using language that excludes newcomers to the network, but also wondered, if anybody had great ideas for how we ensure that we're reaching people when they're new, that they know that the network is out here and it exists and that they can participate in it if they're working on Safe Routes to School. So if any of you wish something happened when you first started working on Safe Routes that would have better connected you to the Safe Routes to School network, maybe drop that in the chat. Do I have power now? Yeah. Still says I can't.
I got you. I got you. Sorry, I had accidentally given it to another caller. Had to reclaim.
They were excited.
Yeah.
Shoot. Let's see. Screen one. All right. While I figure out the screen situation and in the spirit of interaction, do me a favor. At the bottom of your screen, there's a little reactions button. So go down to that. You'll see that you've got a choice of a number of different reactions that you can use on a call. Please use it to react to this statement and know that you'll be reacting throughout the rest of the call, which is the idea of going outside today. What's your reaction? Why don't you throw that up on the screen? Fun. Maybe there's more there that I didn't see. All right, please keep those coming. For those of us that haven't met, I'm Dave Cowan. I'm the Safe Routes to School coordinator at MnDOT. I work closely with Kelly Corbin, who's also on the call on Safe Routes to School projects, and Jason, who I think is in the background there, and our project manager for demonstration projects. But before we get into demonstration projects today, I just wanted to do a couple of quick reminders. Here's a chance to use your reactions. Winter Walk to School Day is coming up next month. It's on February 2nd. If you have, well, let's start with this. If you're working with a school that's going to participate in Winter Walk to School Day, why don't you give us a reaction that shows that on your screen there? And know that if you haven't registered yet, that we do have materials that we can send out to the schools that are participating if you are so interested. Even if you don't want the materials, please register anyway. It kind of gives us a baseline of how many schools are brave enough to get out there in the wintertime and show their kids that if they can go sledding, they can also walk or bike to school. And know that we have on our website plenty of marketing materials that you can download that make it really kind of grab and go for events, posters you can put up around the school, social media posts, templates for stickers if you don't like the ones that we would send to you. And also remember that the Golden Snow Boot Award, our annual prize for the hardiest of all of the schools that participates, is still out there in spite of the pandemic. And so as you participate in the event, take notes on what's going on. What's the temperature? How's the wind chill? What kind of snow are kids trudging through? Take some photos and send those to us. And that will enter you in for the Golden Snow Boot Award. Also, I would hope everybody on the call here can give me a reaction as to whether or not you've got an application coming in for any one of these number of solicitations. We've got a great deal of funding available right now for a variety of different projects. We have our planning assistance solicitation that will be closing on Monday. Our Safe Routes to School boost grants that will be closing on Monday. Our state Safe Routes to School infrastructure solicitation, which I think was extended until the 14th of January, and our TAP infrastructure solicitation, which I'm hoping Kelly can drop the date on because I don't remember it off the top of my head, but those due dates are all looming. Hopefully you're all working on applications and see some opportunity in what's being offered here in terms of funding for projects. But speaking about funding for projects, something we've been doing for a number of years now at MnDOT, and we've been seeing happen, without MnDOT around Minnesota, is demonstration projects. If you're not familiar with what demonstration projects are, they are short-term, low-cost, temporary roadway projects. They are used to pilot and evaluate long-term design solutions, that might be something that you might implement in the future. And some of those examples in terms of ones that we have installed and some that we haven't yet are bicycle lanes, crosswalk markings, curb extensions, and median safety islands. And for those of you that might be new to the call, the way that we came about getting interested in demonstration projects as a safe routes to school strategy was we had this continuum of how people got involved in safe routes to school in Minnesota. They might have had some kind of interest that came up at the school level or the district level around safety or behavior. They may have participated in a walk and bike to school day event, getting their toes wet. Then they applied for planning assistance, and the planning team came in and worked with the safe routes team there. They identified all these strategies, started doing like program implementation type things, and ultimately with a goal of really trying to get some infrastructure implementation going on, some changes to the built environment around the school that would make it safer for kids to walk and bike. And let me just jump a couple slides here. What we found was happening frequently is that when folks got to this stage where the little red line is, there was kind of a disconnect in terms of time, like the turnover of parents at the school that were actually interested in this sort of thing. But also when, even when we were seeing projects funded for infrastructure, there had not been enough or adequate engagement in the community there, and we were having funds turned back to us when it came time to actually build a sidewalk that might run through someone's front yard or change an intersection by their homes. And so we were looking for ways that we might be able to bridge this gap between all of this work communities were doing and kind of the longer term infrastructure changes that they might see. And that is really where we saw demonstration projects fitting in. It was a good opportunity to be engaging the community, build support for projects, and test ideas. So I started to dive into this a little bit. This might be something that you would consider with a community that you're working with, or at least talk to them about. Demonstration projects can have like a whole myriad of benefits that can help you evaluate a project that you may already be considering before investing more dollars in it. They can inspire the community to get involved. It's something really tangible that they can see happen in response to concerns they have about the safety around their school. I specifically remember the project that we did in Fond du Lac, where a student had been hit on their bicycle months ahead of that. And the parent came out while the crew was installing the demonstration project and was just, I don't want to say baffled, but was just really excited that there had been some kind of response to what had happened to their daughter, and something tangible that she could see in the street within a short period of time. So it also develops public awareness of like what kind of options might help slow traffic down and make it safer for people to walk and bike. It definitely increases public engagement around trying these new treatments, but also particularly with Safe Routes to School, it increases the understanding of the community around the active transportation needs or goals of the Safe Routes to School program. And something that I really love with Safe Routes in general, but also demonstration project, is that it gives you another opportunity to build relationships with all of these different partners that we're constantly trying to get to work together on this shared goal of safety for students walking and bicycling. And then it allows us to evaluate or gather a little bit of data on what it might be like if this change were to be made permanently. Some communities have chosen to take our demonstration project guide and go out and build these on their own without any support from MnDOT, which is awesome. But we have also had demonstration project technical assistance available two communities that were interested in using a consultant team and our materials to work with the Safe Routes to School team on developing a project, installing a project, evaluating it, and ultimately removing it. And so we have another demonstration project technical assistance opportunity coming up. It's a mouthful. But basically, if you want to build a demonstration project with one of the communities that you're working with, or they've showed interest in their Safe Routes to School planning process, you have an opportunity here to act on that. Our technical assistance opportunity is as follows. It is eligible for Safe Routes to School projects, but new this year is we are working to make that eligible also for our active transportation program, which we've talked a little bit about here. That means that if you're working in a community and they don't have Safe Routes work going on, but they have been working on walking and biking, maybe this demonstration project or this technical assistance opportunity is something that you'd consider. The application for it is going to open the week of January 31st, which I believe is a Monday. Let me catch myself. The implementation timeline for that project is dependent on a couple of kind of moving objects there, but we're aiming for installation by fall. So would you apply January, and the application is open for just about 5 weeks. We would want to get underway with those communities that we could as quickly as possible to install those projects. And then the application scores are similar to what you might find on some of our other Safe Routes to School applications. We're really looking to give priority to communities that are, highlighting equity, scoring high on our student transportation equity for priority populations tool. We're looking for strong coalitions or teams of people that are working on active transportation or Safe Routes to School, and potentially even have a Safe Routes to School or active transportation plan in place that identifies that barrier that this demonstration project might address. And of course, you cannot build anything in the roadway without support of the road authority, which is actually one of the main reasons why we went ahead and developed the demonstration project guide in the first place. So we're really looking to make sure that that connection has been made, the buy-in is there, and they understand what they may be taking on. So this is just a teaser for the opportunity that's coming up. More of information will be available this on January 31st. I think Kelly likely shared the link to the landing page where that grant opportunity or that technical assistance opportunity will land. But I just wanted to mention maybe one other thing, the types of projects that this is a good choice for. Complicated interchanges and highways are not something that are really a great idea for a demonstration project. We have some criteria we use for ideal demonstration projects, and that is that there's a clear sight distance, that the speed limit is 40 miles per hour or below that is posted, not more than 4 lanes of traffic. So I-94 is out. Average daily traffic of 15,000 motor vehicles per day or less, usable curb ramps present, and adequate existing lighting. So these are all ideal project criteria that you can kind of keep in mind if you're trying to think about which part of your Safe Routes to School or active transportation plan might be a good choice to apply for. And then if after this and after listening to Shannon talk about what they did in Burnsville, you're still having trouble visualizing what the heck a demonstration project is, Jake Reuter in our office has actually created this fantastic map that is all of the demonstration projects that MnDOT has been involved in, both Safe Routes to School and otherwise, that you can click around on the state and you can actually see the photos and read a little bit of the narrative on each one of these installations, how they went, what we learned from them. And if you're in the position of wanting to talk to one community about a demonstration project, and it happens to be that the neighboring community has already installed a demonstration project, it's a little easier to get your foot in the door with that conversation. So please, actually, is Shannon on, Eric?
She has not quite joined yet.
Okay, so I have a second, which I will which I'll flip over here if you haven't followed the link yet to this map, but it, as you zoom and click on the different areas, you can take a look at some of the photos of what went in. I don't think it identifies here on each one specifically whether or not it's safe routes, but I don't think that matters. And you can kind of take a little tour around the state's demonstration projects. But I'd like to hear first, well, speaking of Shannon, here's Burnsville right here. I'd much prefer to hand this over to Shannon's personal story. So I'm going to, maybe I'll pause for questions, Eric, since we can do that on the solicitation, and then hopefully Shannon will have enough time to present.
Yep.
Any questions on either the currently open solicitations, what's coming up with demonstration projects? If learning a little bit more about demonstration projects piqued your interest enough to maybe talk to some of the partners you work with, why don't you drop a reaction below just to see what kind of interest there might be out there. CJ is asking a good question about what percentage of demonstration projects have become permanent. I'm not sure that I have that readily available information.
What, I'm sorry, just like what is the process from A to Z of you've had the successful demonstration project and now you're looking to make it permanent?
Well, it kind of depends on the community. I can use an example, Cass and Mantorville, which is where we did our pilot demonstration project. They actually already had a project in mind. They wanted to make an improvement to a road near a school. I think they even had already received approval for it. The funding was in place. The installation was going to be in like 2023, 2024. But they wanted to do a demonstration project to see if the design would actually work. And so it helped them kind of do a little bit more engagement than maybe they normally would have with the design process, get it out there. One thing I remember in particular was the turn radius for the buses was something everybody was concerned about in the original permanent design. The original permanent design made it easy for buses to get through that intersection and maybe a little bit too quickly. And the demonstration project allowed them to test that radius to see what the bus drivers were actually capable of doing when they came around that corner, and learned that they could keep it tighter. Buses would slow down, it would be safer, and cars, of course, moving through the intersection. It would be safer for students that were crossing that particular intersection. And so they made those changes in their permanent design, as well as like there was like bump outs that made the crossing distance shorter that they changed the layout of.
Well, Shannon was going to jump on right about now, but we might have time for one more question. How about, has anybody on the call also created a demonstration project? Or planned for one?
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
but before you pose the next question, I just want to let Shannon off the hook a little bit here, in that she was in the middle of her workday and was had like a very small window in which she was going to jump onto this call and present. And so if she's running a little bit late or can't make it, maybe something significant came up at work today.
Yeah, indeed. Hugely grateful for someone to be like, I'm in a group meeting and I will take the 15-minute break in our meeting to present, which is pretty big. But yeah, how about any reacts in the chat if they're interested in creating a demonstration project, because I know that I myself tried to do a transportation demand management plan for a school in St. Paul that's being created. And I wanted to do a demonstration project, and that required figuring out who had the right of way. And it was a bit of doing, but I'm curious if anyone else has an interest in doing it.
There are some folks jumping in the chat here, Eric, talking about what they've done.
Ooh, City
Or
of
are
Wyndham.
doing or hope to do.
Nice. Removable bump outs in City of Wyndham. 3 demonstration projects in D8, tons of logistics. Yeah. 2 in St. Paul this spring. I should talk to Sarah and see if either of these are the school that I was working with. Got one done in Faribault. Through MnDOT. And I think the tool that you've kind of showed up here, Dave, is huge to give people ideas and see where those things have actually happened. All right, well, I'm going to reach out to Shannon real quick, and then we might just do breakouts if she's unavailable. But Dave, do you have some poetry or soliloquies that you would like to practice?
There's actually
rehearse?
something I've been writing and I've been meaning to share with this group. So I'm glad you gave me this window to do that. This is going to be good.
I have a question for you, Dave, if you'd entertain it.
I can try.
I am wondering, in previous demonstration projects that you all have helped with, what kind of flexibility there is with the design, how the design might interact with MUTCD versus something that you might see on like a cool online article about tactical urbanism and cool stuff going on the roads. And if you could just talk about if there is more to it than like a medium dark red paint on the ground kind of situation. Thank you.
That's a great question. And I presume by cool things in the roadway, you mean things that are not MUTCD, right?
I guess that's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a fair question, Will. I almost should have provided a little bit of history on how we came about developing the demonstration project guide, but part of it was that we wanted advocates that were interested in changes to road design to be able to make the case. And what we found with a lot of tactical urbanism, while it does bring media attention perhaps to projects, that if you put something in that actually can't be built by MUTCD standards, then you're advocating for something that ultimately won't be able to happen if you bring in an engineer. So the demonstration project guide was intended to both ensure that engineers were a part of that process, or the process or the guide were a part of that process from the beginning, that we were adhering to MUTCD standards, but still like testing something out there like you might do with tactical urbanism that could ultimately be built. Off the top of my head, I can't remember what colors are in the MUTCD, but we do have actually a palette of colors that are available, and the kind of burnt orange has been a favorite. I know Jason knows the specific name of that color, but I can't remember it off the top of my head.
Sienna. Shannon has joined us. You want to quick give her the power?
Hi, Shannon.
Hi, Shannon. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you.
Welcome.
All right.
Let's see. Make the host. It's coming your way.
Perfect. I'm just trying to grab my slide. It's here.
Eric, maybe you can introduce Shannon as she gets her slides up.
Well, I am just excited for this project. Shannon did some incredible community engagement, I think, which is my big takeaway from a successful demonstration project, is the amount of outreach that you do in informing people and getting feedback around the project. So I'm really impressed by the community engagement and the different folks that were engaged, not just students, but also and families, but also the community members. So yeah, really interesting situation there near the highways. But I'll kind of let Shannon do that bit.
Just gotta make sure I'm showing the right thing. I'm on break from work. I'm actually in the middle of I have group on Thursday mornings where I present there too. So I want to make sure I'm presenting the right stuff. Unless everyone wants to learn about extreme emotions. Let's see, how do I share this?
No, just to save time, I'm gonna share it for you.
Thank you, I appreciate that. There it is. All right. So a little bit about me first. I'm Shannon Woolman. When I started this project, I was the vice president of the PTO at Gideon Pond Elementary. I'm down here in Burnsville, Minnesota. I'm currently just a parent volunteer now, but this project's my baby, so it stayed with me as I transitioned out of that role. Gideon Pond is located, like I said, in Burnsville, Minnesota. It's right there on the map. I circled it. And as you can see, it's kind of right, not too far off. We actually share woods with City Hall. And then Nicollet Avenue, if you're not familiar with Burnsville, runs north and south. To the north, you hit our downtown area called Heart of the City, which is it's a lot of small businesses, local businesses. There's a water park there for kids, a three coffee shops actually. So lots of traffic going that way. And then to the south, it connects onto Highway 42.
You just tell me next whenever you want me to go next slide.
Perfect, I will do that. Highway 42 runs into two other cities, and then it connects onto I-35 going south. It is at the conjunction of 35. So there's a lot of traffic that kind of runs that way. To the other direction, we have Highway 11, which is a county highway that also runs north and south. So Gideon Pond is kind of sandwiched right in between these two major streets that hit onto major highways of 35E, 35W, and then Burnsville is kind of like in the circle of those two areas, with Gideon Pond being right smack dab in the middle of all of that. So we see at Gideon Pond is a lot of traffic going down 130th. 130th is a collector street. You can see all those little neighborhood roads there. All of those flow directly to 130th. So we have a lot of traffic in the morning, especially as people are going to work. Then you have the buses that come into Gideon Pond. Gideon Pond was set up as a neighborhood school. All of the schools in Burnsville are neighborhood schools back in the 60s when walking was the goal. And it was all accessible. It was only for neighborhoods. You didn't have the open enrollment that you see now. There wasn't the need for busing. And so what's happened as time has gone on is with open enrollment, we have more people open enrolling into Gideon Pond from other communities because we do have a really strong program for kiddos that have different concerns like speech delays or hard of hearing. We used to have a contract with another district to do specifically hard of hearing work. That has since gone away due to some changes, but we still have a lot of those kiddos that chose to stay, that open enroll in. Because of the neighborhood growth, there's a lot more traffic, especially given the boom of 35E and 35W. When Burnsville was first built, we were a farming community. And so you really didn't have all that traffic coming in and out. But now as the metro has really expanded, it's become a hub and a main gateway to going north and south for accessibility. So we see a lot of traffic down that road. The speed limit is 130, but it is a wider highway. And so it is very common for people to go 140 down there very naturally.
Yeah, just a quick interjection, Shannon. Sorry, we only have like 5 more minutes. So.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. I'm just letting you know.
Next slide. So then really quick, before we started our journey, we did We built a relationship with the city engineers and the police department because of all of the concerns. That led to county relationships. Within those county relationships, they recommended we redo our SRTS plan, our Safe Routes to School plan, which then we applied for a grant to work with Alta Planning to get that prepped, which then helped us identify what we really needed to do to make that street safer. And then, so our goals, calm down the traffic, make drivers go slower. We found a lot of distracted driving, texting, not paying attention. Pedestrian safety, they would get impatient with the busing and all the traffic in the morning, especially also happening in the evening. They didn't like some of the temporary, like you can't turn left out of the parking lot, you have to turn right. So there was a lot of ignoring of that rule, going around drivers where it wasn't safe. We've had a lot of near misses with they weren't even stopping for our crosswalk kids. Next slide, please. So that led into the recommendation of applying for this grant. We applied, in 2020, we really focused on strategies and action steps. We applied for the boost or not the boost grant, I'm sorry. Thank you. I have updated on mine for this grant winter 2020 before our SRTS plan was even done. And then we received the grant that spring. Our SRTS plan was completed that summer. We were supposed to start, our goal was to do this in 2021, the fall of 2020. However, COVID made everything virtual and we wanted to make sure that we could get the most information the fastest we could and make sure everyone was on the same page. So we pushed out our demonstration project until August of 2021, in which we implemented it. We removed it in November of 2021. So it was just removed currently. Here is an aerial view of 130th before the grant. So this is what it looks like in front of the school. And you can see Oakland and Portland kind of have that curve shape, and those are the two main ways that drop in. This was our pre-plan of what it would look like. So we installed for a demonstration project 4 curb bulb outs. And then there's like the little tiny, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little yellow stripe in the middle of the road. And that's where we put in a standing school crossing sign. So all that was painted, the little white dots are where the poles went in. You can go to the next slide, please. And there is the completed demonstration project. So we had volunteers come out and actually we had enough volunteers, it only took half a day to do the painting, the striping, and putting in those poles. It was a success, we determined. A lot of people felt safer with this. There was increased awareness. I got to observe cars literally slow down as they hit the school zone. Even when school wasn't there, there's nobody around. It was really cool to see how just having that eye trick of looking like the road narrows slows people down. It doesn't actually narrow the road. People really think it does. And that was the biggest complaint I had, was the road is now too narrow, which makes me smile because it's not. All right, next slide. They just think it is. Lessons learned. It is a lot of work. You really need a strong team and people that are willing to work with you on it. I had 2 other parents that helped me apply for the grants, but it's a lot of coordination of community, volunteers, parents, officials, city officials. There's a lot of conversations that have to happen about what we can and cannot do. What we actually wanted to implement in front of Gideon Pond, we couldn't do because of city regulations and zoning laws. So we had to work very closely with police and emergency to make sure that it wouldn't affect emergency vehicles. We had to work closely with the city planning team to make sure we were following code. We had to communicate a lot to the neighbors and everyone to make sure they understood what went into this and why we were doing it. Communication really is key. We communicated a lot using social media, email blasts. I had 3 different locations where I was posting why we were doing it to everybody, even if they weren't in the school community, to make sure that the community as a whole, whether they live and work here, could understand why we were doing this and have an opportunity to provide feedback. So if you have any questions about my really fast presentation, feel free to email me, call me. I'm more than happy to answer questions and to slow it down a little bit to kind of explain how we were able to make this as a community success. It wasn't 100%. It's not 100% everyone loved it. But I would say of those responses that we got back, it was straight because they didn't get the communication of why this was a necessary project. They don't understand how it was being paid for. And they don't understand that the road is actually not smaller or more narrow. And so a lot of the concerns we got back from the community was pure misunderstanding and language barriers, because Burnsville is a very diverse community with a lot of people speaking Somali, Arabic, and Spanish. So it's hard, even though we provided it in all of those languages, it's hard to make sure we hit all of those pockets. We did use our cultural liaisons to the schools, but that doesn't hit our community that are not in the school system. So biggest recommendations for your success is making sure you're communicating.
Thank you so much, Shannon. And
very welcome.
can you stay on for just another minute in case there are questions?
Absolutely.
Okay, so thank you everyone for joining the call. Thank you again, Shannon, so much for taking a break in your work. If anyone wants to stay on and has some questions, we'd love to, but we'll let everyone else jump off who needs to get on with their day. We know we're going over a little bit. So thank you so much. But yeah, does anyone have any questions? Let me see if I can find my chat. And I want to say, I think that just hearing about other demonstration projects, that this one was so successful because of all the communication that you did. I know that that's always a big part of this. And I think that even the outreach with community or cultural liaisons and in different languages is a great step as well. All right. Well, if there are no other questions, thanks so much, y'all. Enjoy the rest of your day.